Awesome. So thank you all for being here tonight. We're really excited to have our first Ask Me Anything, and especially to have entrepreneur, investor, and speaker Kwame Anku here today to share a little bit about his experience and his expertise in one being an entrepreneur and investor, but also just the role he plays in building ecosystems and really supporting entrepreneurs, not only in our Sacramento region, but throughout the nation and the world. My name's Cameron Law, and I'm the interim executive director of the Carlson Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. For those of you that don't know, the Carlson Center serves as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education and community, and really to support and enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. And we have a core mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region. And we really are passionate about trying to build the next generation of impact-driven innovators and entrepreneurs. And we have this vision that Sacramento is going to be the next place, and it's going to be this premier hub of innovation and entrepreneurship. And couldn't be more happy to have it at Sacramento State and really being anchored in the community and trying to drive that impact and that growth throughout the region. We offer a variety of programs and resources along the entrepreneurial journey. So not just for early stage founders, we also have opportunities for late stage founders and founders that are on campus, but also in the community as well. So tonight's program, falls really kind of in some of that earlier stage. We call it as part of our Discover programs along the entrepreneurial journey. And we're really trying to, dispel and, kind of take away some of the romanticism of being an entrepreneur. We have, this kind of perception of what entrepreneurship and what an entrepreneur might be. And we really want to bring that to you and take away some of that glamour away from it, but also making that more accessible to you and really launching into your journey as an innovator and an entrepreneur. And so I couldn't be more excited to start with that today with Kwame Anku. We did have a key partner in getting this event off and running today. We had the MLK Junior Center from Sac State as a key partner in launching this first session. And so I wanted to pass it over to Dr. Marceline Watson-Derbigny to say a few words, and then as well as Kaifa Yates. So feel free to take the virtual mic and share a little bit about the MLK Junior Center.
Thank you, Cameron. On behalf of the MLK Honor Center to leverage this great event, it is our hope that you will be empowered and that you will acquire tools that foster even greater entrepreneurship in our region. Cameron, we extend a special thanks to you for your leadership of the center and for your strong collaboration skills and visionary skills. We know that your heart is there and you're committed to our students, and we thank you for that. The MLK Junior Center is committed to advancing the student success of African American students on the Sacramento State campus and those with an interest in the African American heritage. We offer coaching, advising, tutoring, Sankofa talks, dialogues, outreach services, personalized support, and leadership development. And we count it really a true honor to partner with you. So at this time, I'll turn it over to Kaifa. He's our outreach coordinator for the MLK Center, who will share some words. Thank you.
Kaifa, we're not able to hear you.
Are you able to hear me now?
Yep, you got it.
Perfect. Okay. Hey, good evening. Good evening. Thank you, Marceline. I appreciate that. Like Marceline said, my name is Kaifa Yates. I am the outreach coordinator for the Martin Luther King Center. So we really are happy and ecstatic to host this event with Cameron to help out and establish entrepreneurship, especially in the Sacramento area. I'm really a big advocate of really trying to start your own business, to really trying to have your own. So I'm really glad that Kwame is here to really speak to our students, to speak to the vision of really being an entrepreneur and how to go throughout that process. So as an outreach coordinator, my primary job is really to connect our students to different resources on campus. And Cameron has been a great partner in helping us out and establish that idea and that vision. So I appreciate him for connecting and creating this event. And I appreciate everyone for showing up, and hope this is going to be a wonderful event. We have a great time, and thank you for having us.
The pleasure is mine, and thank you both for the partnership.
I can't hear Cameron.
Everyone else can hear me, all right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's cool. All right, the good old virtual technology here. I appreciate it. But yeah, thank you both for the partnership, and really excited about the opportunity to elevate Kwame's story, but also to really demonstrate the power of being an entrepreneur, and that in being an entrepreneur, you ultimately are building the physical world we live in, the virtual world we live in, and you can be a part of really making a change and growing a better future for us all and for society. So without further ado, wanted to provide a little bit of context about how this kind of came up regarding Kwame and I. Kwame and I have been working together over the last 4 to 5 years, and kind of setting the stage for tonight. We really wanted to look at and embrace this ask me anything approach. A lot of times there's this ask me anything, and is it truly ask me anything? But Kwame has definitely stepped up to the stage, and our conversation earlier today was we kind of came around this title of dispelling the romanticism and mythology behind being an entrepreneur. A lot of times we see the accolades, we see the long bio, which I'm going to read here in a second. But what we really want to share to you is like the work that goes behind that, and then also the gratitude and thanks for the change that comes from that work. And so we really want you to we want to go as deep as you want to in this conversation today. Our kind of agenda for the session is Kwame's going to say about 15 to 20 minutes about kind of his story, and then I'll transition into some Q&A and then open it up to all of you to ask questions from Kwame. So in getting started, I want to start with a little bit of bio, and then I'll hand it over to Kwame for his presentation. So Kwame Anku is the CEO and chairman of the Black Star Fund, an early stage innovation fund. Prior to Black Star Fund, Kwame co-founded and served as principal of the Black Angel Tech Fund, a pioneering fund that focused on capitalizing Black technology entrepreneurs. He was named as one of the top 25 Black venture capitalists to watch in 2018 by PitchBook. Kwame was selected to be one of 21 recipients of the prestigious Aspen Ascend Fellowship from the Aspen Institute. He's a graduate from Stanford University, has been a keynote speaker at a variety of events, from the Google for Entrepreneurs Black Wall Street Conference in Durham to the Ford Freedom Awards in Detroit. He's been on a variety of television shows and radio programs from CNN to NPR. And he's really deeply involved in growing ecosystems. He serves on a variety of entrepreneurial boards, everything from the Board of Regents for the North Central University, Operation iDream in Zambia, and then our own Carlson Center Advisory Board. And so we're really delighted to have him today to share his story and to answer your questions and really get down into the nitty gritty of being an entrepreneur and what it takes, and that work that ultimately all of you hopefully might take steps forward in doing and building your dreams and your ideas. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Kwame, and wanted to show my appreciation for you and giving your time and being willing to be vulnerable and share your story and answer questions from our community. So thank you, Kwame, and I'll pass it on over to you. Quick housekeeping. If everyone wanted to put it in speaker view, it might be the best way to see Kwame's face instead of a lot of profile pictures. And then please remain on mute so new faces don't populate over Kwame's while he's speaking. So I'll pass it over to you, Kwame, and thank you all for being here.
All right. Well, good evening, everybody. Excited to be with you this evening. I'm going to not have it in speaker mode because I actually want to see all your pretty faces. Certainly don't want to be looking at my big mug. Just excited to have a chance to hang out with you and share whatever I can share with you that will be helpful, whether it's in your entrepreneurial journey, your student journey, your life journey. That's what we really want to accomplish tonight. So want to extend a thank you to Dr. Marceline and Kaifa. We're so excited to have you as partners with MLK Junior Center. Certainly an honor, and hopefully we can live up to the expectation with that bold name and that bold legacy. Really excited for again, work with my buddy Cameron. You guys don't let the baby face fool you. And he's trying to always be nice and all that. This guy is mean. I called him. I was like, hey, could we call this AMAA? Like, ask me almost anything? Because I don't want to say everything. And he was like, no, it's got to be AMA. I was like, just add another A. It's the same thing. It sounds. He's like, no. So, he's not as nice as he looks. No, I'm just playing. No, just really excited, Cameron. So proud of you and all the work you're doing with Carlson Center. And I'll be remiss too, and I don't know if you guys know this, but besides the fact that I'm on the board of the Carlson Center, and Dale is just an awesome all-around human being, he was actually the very first investor in Black Star Fund. So my respect and admiration to him is really boundless, and anything and everything that I can do for the Carlson Center, I'm here to do. I'm here to serve. I'm here to help. But you should know, besides the fact that he is a Sac State graduate, and besides the fact that he, wrote the check to make this amazing center possible, this is a human being who, quite frankly, has done exceptionally well in his life, and certainly doesn't have to spend the time, resources, and energy that he does to help other entrepreneurs achieve the same success that he has achieved and beyond. So he's somebody who's a buddy of mine, an investment partner of mine, and anything and everything I can do to help and serve, I'm here to do that. So I'm going to tell a little bit about the story. And, one thing I would say, particularly to students, because I get asked a lot, people will send me these LinkedIn messages. Oh, Kwame, I want to hear your story. I want to learn about your story. I'm like, it's on the internet. You know what I mean? It's just like Google, like YouTube, I got all these interviews. I kind of say the same thing. So today, because it was special, right? We're not just, just doing kind of the run of the mill thing. We're doing the AMA, thanks to Cameron. And so I didn't want to spend as much time giving you the whole story. I'm going to give you pieces of it. If it's that intriguing, then there's great things. I mean, we did a great startup grind here in Sacramento. That's online, went real deep on that one. Earn Your Leisure, those of you who are familiar with that podcast, you want to check out episode 73. We filmed that one in Miami Beach and told a lot of the story there. For those of you I haven't had the privilege of getting to meet yet, and you don't even know who I am, so we're definitely going to give you enough of the story so it makes sense, and this will be worth your time. But I wanted to spend the majority of the time tonight answering your questions, right? And being able to go deep. And let me be really clear. If you're asking me stuff about me, no problem. We're going to go deep there. But if you want technical questions, personal questions, conceptual questions, we're going to go where you want to go. The whole idea here is that you want to be able to get some light where there may be some darkness. You want to get some direction where there might be some confusion. And I want to be able to do that with you this evening. So let me, as you can tell from my name, my folks are actually from Ghana. And I was born in the States. Clearly, I do not have the Ghanaian accent. And when you meet the Ghanaians, they end every sentence with, oh, it's good to see you, oh. How are you, oh? I mean, I don't understand it. I don't say it that much. I say it when I'm there. So I can try to fit in. But clearly, I was born in the States. So I was raised in Cleveland, Ohio, believe it or not. And, my father is from, a village in West Africa, no running water, no electricity. He was 17 years old before the country was independent from British colonial rule. And so I say that because he came to the States, got a scholarship for undergrad, went to medical school, opened up a medical practice in Cleveland, Ohio. He was a cancer specialist. And then he started buying land, a very successful cancer doctor too, by the way, in the 80s and 90s, right? So pre-internet was having 85, 90% cure rates in cancer, but pretty exceptional. And then in the 90s, he started buying land back home in Ghana. And so today, he's one of the largest land owners in the country. And my brother moved back almost 20 years ago and runs the land development side of the business. And then I help on business development stuff. So I share all that to say that I come from a family that's overcome kind of exceptional odds. And the idea of ever since I was a child, I was always intrigued by the idea of creating something out of nothing. And you'll see that as I kind of share some kind of highlights of the life story, you'll kind of see that theme throughout. And obviously, whether you're an entrepreneur, you're supporting the entrepreneurial ecosystem, right? That fundamentally, that's what it is. You're creating literally something out of nothing, a business out of nothing, an idea out of nothing, a technology out of nothing, a company out of nothing, a team out of nothing, right? You're creating mechanisms that didn't exist prior to your conceptualization of it. And so whether it was anything I personally was doing, I was just fascinated by it ever since I was a child. And I got a production company. I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But again, that's the theme, right? Even when you're doing production, doing film, doing music, doing videos, you're creating something out of nothing, right? And so watching my dad, I remember being a kid, literally like 5 years old, watching he had his first office. My mom was teaching fashion design at the time. She basically took a 6-month leave, which ended up being a 14-year leave because he couldn't afford a secretary. And I remember sharpening the pencils, sitting on the ground, sharpening the pencils at my dad's office, like at 5. So he didn't have money for a file cabinet. He didn't have money for a secretary. And I'm 48 and I still remember that, like, over 40 plus years ago. I remember it like it was yesterday. As I grew up though, I also witnessed the change. And it's not just the material change, right? Oh, we had, my dad, when I was 5, had a Pinto with foam coming out of the seat and was like all beat up. And then, at some point he had like a BMW and a Mercedes, right? But what I saw was the building, right? I saw the building of an entity. And I saw when he had his first assistant, and then I saw there was 3 people on the staff, and then I saw there was 2 offices, and there was 8 people on the staff. And I would sit in the office, and it was full of people in the waiting room, and all these people were coming to see my dad. And when my brother and sister and I would go visit my dad at the office, it said Vincent Anku, MD Incorporated on the door. And that's what we saw. So that it wasn't just, well, he was a doctor. I mean, people think the doctors and they're successful and everything else, but it's like, he was my dad who I knew came from where he came from, right? And so I understood the journey. And I also was a part of, particularly on the business side. I wasn't there, obviously, when he started, came to the States in the 60s, but I certainly was there at the beginning of his business. And I saw all of that. And I remember one day being like 14, and I was in the office with my mom, and my dad was busy seeing patients. He's kind of walking. And my dad's like kind of a quiet dude. He's not a particularly gregarious guy. Any communication skills I have from my mom, who's particularly talkative and expressive. And so my dad, he was kind of in his zone, and he was walking down the hall, and he picked up a piece of lint. He just picked this little piece of lint up off the ground, and he just threw it in the trash canister. My mom was like, she nudged me. It's like, you see that? And I was like, yeah, because I couldn't figure out my dad was like picking up lint. And she goes, when you see somebody do that, that's how you know who owns the business. I'm like, I never forgot that, right? Because it was the attention to detail, and it was also the pride in product, right? And if you think, well, product, your dad's a cancer doctor, like, what do you mean product, right? Well, the product is the experience. When you come to that office and you may have what somebody told you was a terminal illness. And we don't make light, obviously, of a cancer diagnosis, because we know we've got some survivors who are on the call, maybe some people who are going through the process right now. But my dad had dozens and dozens and dozens of people that I personally met that would talk these stories about how their doctor, their oncologist had said they only had 6 months to live or 3 months to live. And then they'll say, and that was 10 years ago, because we went and saw your dad, and your dad was able to keep my father alive, keep me alive, keep my mom alive, that type of thing. And so the product there wasn't just the treatment, but it was the experience. People are coming into that environment nervous, anxious, and my dad wanted to make sure that the whole experience was as positive as possible. And so that was something that I really held on to. So fast forward, I graduated from high school when did I graduate? 1990, and went out to Stanford. And so I basically stayed in Northern California. I've had some short stints. I went to LA, came back, went to DC, came back, went to New York, came back. Something about this area I just loved and fell in love with 30 years ago. But Stanford was obviously a life-changing and amazing experience for me. But when it comes to now, and I'm jumping time frames here because of our time frame. But I went to school. Well, let me share it this way. I had a production company for about 15 years. And later, we're talking about maybe 10 years ago, 7 years ago, I had the opportunity to work with Prince, the artist, not the British royalty, the musician. and who, for I could see Arlene and Lisa smiling and being happy. That's because they're Prince fans. I can see the smile. So, but he was my favorite artist actually ever since I was a little kid. Although I should not have been listening to his music, at least some of his more racier stuff at 8 years old. But I still liked him, and I would sneak in the room when my mom couldn't hear, and I would play the music because I liked it. That said, you can imagine having an opportunity to not only work with a global music legend, but also like your favorite artist of all time. And I was fortunate enough to be able to do that. And one of the things that Prince said, and I developed an app for him, I shot a video for him, I did business development for him. And then I had the honor of working as a national director with an organization called Yes We Code. And that was helping young, Black and kids in urban environments learn how to code so that they could get entry-level jobs and working at technology companies. So this meant that, you didn't have to have even a college degree to go through a particular program and then have a $60,000, $70,000 a year job. But it was in that work that Prince, had asked a really powerful question that had kind of shook me when he said it, and it's always stayed with me in terms of the work that I do. But he basically said, look, where are the Black Mark Zuckerbergs? Like, where are those people? And obviously at the time, and to some extent now, there wasn't a good answer, right? And I was at a summit for African-American alumni of Stanford back in 2015. And I was on a panel talking about diversity and technology, right? So Yes We Code, I was working with the Obama White House and Facebook and Google, did the first ever televised hackathon for young people in Detroit. It was on MSNBC, and we had Big Sean beaming in from Tokyo. Like it was just madness. It was amazing stuff. So, working with all those technology companies, I was doing a lot of speaking, and I was on this panel, and we're talking about diversity and technology. This was 2015. And there was like this announcement, this kind of declaration that in Silicon Valley, you had less than 2% of all the people working in these companies were African-American. And there was almost kind of an outrage. Now you guys are just like, oh yeah, everybody knows that. What was the outrage? But it was in 2015, 2014, 2015, when Google actually released the diversity numbers for the first time. So people were really reacting to that. And so my peer group, a Stanford alum, 10, 15 years before me and 10, 15 years after, were basically like, we need to do something. Well, what do we need to do? Well, we should go to Facebook, and we should do this, and we should do that. And they basically wanted to put like a pressure campaign on these companies to hire more African Americans. So, I was on the panel, and I got asked my thoughts about it. And people thought, because of the work I was doing, that I would have been like leading the charge. And I was like, you guys, why would we do that? And it was like, wait, what? And I was like, no, why would we do that? Like, we went to school with the guys, and I say guys because it was only guys, who created all this stuff. Like Jerry Yang, who created Yahoo, was 2 years ahead of me. Reid Hoffman was a year behind me. And Reid Hoffman, for those of you who don't know, created LinkedIn and was part of the original group at PayPal, right? Who all became gazillionaires when they sold it to eBay. Brian Acton, not a name most of you know, but he created a little app that you probably know called WhatsApp that was sold to Facebook for $19 billion. Brian Acton was in my class. So the folks who created PayPal and LinkedIn and Yahoo and YouTube and Palantir, and the list goes on and on, most of these guys were like literally within 2 or 3 years of me. I mean, Larry and Sergey that created Google, I graduated in 94, and they were in grad school like 2 or 3 years later. And I was still around, I was still on campus, right? So these were my peers and our peers and contemporaries. So when it comes down to it, when I was an undergrad, there was a gentleman named Peter Thiel, and some of you may know Peter Thiel. And he wrote the first angel investment check to Facebook for $500,000, not for $50 million, right? Not for $5 million, but for $500,000. That check today is worth over $3 billion, and Peter Thiel is still on the board of Facebook to this day, right? So the point is that, I was saying, look, we have an opportunity to really change the game here. This is not about pressuring Facebook. Facebook's a private company. They can hire who they want to hire. Google's a private company. They can hire who they want to hire. But what if we were aggregating investment money? And what if we were investing in these extraordinary Black technology entrepreneurs so that they could potentially create the next Facebook or the next Google or the next generation technology? Because, you know, you see the Elons of the world. And the reality is at one point they were a young, quite frankly, broke college student with a dream and a pretty extraordinary work ethic. And through the sale of PayPal started a journey. And that journey led to other companies which had exits, which then led to Tesla and SpaceX. And I think it's really important to think it's not, everything is not about money. I want to be really clear about that. But, you know, we always say that, you know, money's not everything, but it is when you don't have any, right? It ranks up there with oxygen. Now, it's one thing to have enough to survive. It's another thing to have the fuel to build the thing that you're setting out to build. Anybody can create a blueprint, but if you don't have the financial wherewithal, the backing, in some case investment money, to build that building, then you just have a blueprint. And in the worst case scenario, you just have an idea. And so a lot of times that's the thing that's making the difference. And so we set out with Black Angel Tech Fund to start to correct that problem. You know, for those of you who would find it interesting, I was fascinated. I was charged with actually getting the URL. And I remember going to GoDaddy and kind of like being nervous because I figured it'd be like impossible to get some configuration of Black Angel or Black Angel Technology or whatever. And every configuration that I wanted to try was available. And then I started realizing, wait a second. So I started Googling, and then I realized in 2015, there wasn't one fund in the entire country, not one venture fund specifically focusing on Black technology entrepreneurs. There wasn't one. So, you know, that was like a bittersweet thing. Obviously, I got the URL that I wanted, and we were able to go to work and really be pioneers in the space. But it also let us know that we, you know, we were in rare air just starting this thing, right? So we set out to do that. We're able to raise a couple $1 million, didn't do anything over the top, but we're able to invest in some pretty exceptional companies. And I was the principal of that fund. We're kind of learning on the job. It's really amazing now. We're seeing all the progress that's happening, but we were there. We talk about the early days, right? This is not, we're living in a different sense of time, right? What used to take 20 years now takes, in some cases, 2 or 3. So we said, man, way back in the day, it's like way back in the day right now in 2020 is like 2015, right? It's like the world is very, very different. But when you see organizations like Black Girls Code, one of the premier organizations helping young Black women and really young Black girls learn how to get into technology and in the STEM fields, and Kimberly Bryant with Google, and you know, all these big awards and millions of dollars and all that great stuff. But I was with Kimberly in 2014 when like nobody would return her phone calls. Right? I was at conferences with her where she was like almost holding the tears back because she had this dream of having Black girls be able to have a safe environment to really learn about STEM and technology. And she couldn't get the help and the support that she needed. And so, you know, we were all there at the beginning, all this stuff, you know, Girls Code, All Girls Code, Black Girls Code, Yes We Code, like all that stuff. Like we were literally at the forefront of what would later become what we see now. When you had accelerators, incubators, and then we were the pioneers in terms of the funds. And then you go to 2019, 2018 is when I decided to do Black Star Fund. And I had a little more expansive vision of what it was that I wanted to do. And so I created Black Star Fund. As I share with you, Dale Carlsen was our first investor in the fund and really helped to make it possible. And so, you know, with that fund, it's crazy. And I'll say this, there's a little bit of a, you know, it's a nice accolade. It's a fact, but it's also, you know, kind of a bittersweet thing, right? So as of today, I'm the only venture capitalist in the whole country that's created 2 all-Black portfolios. That's it, right? And we're about to close this fund and start another fund. It's the same, it's still Black Star Fund. It's just the Black Star Fund 2, and it's a larger fund. And obviously with that one, it'll be the 3rd, right? So it's great for me and it's an accolade, but it's also real telling of where we are. in the society right now. I don't attribute that to racism or systemic racism or anybody blocking anything, but I do. It's still very illuminating that we got some work to do, right? I don't want to be, bragging about that factoid. I want to be part of a cadre of fund managers, all who are doing this work. Now, this isn't like charity work, right? This isn't, oh, isn't it terrible that less than 1% of the money goes to African-American entrepreneurs? I don't come from that standpoint. I do think that there's a great opportunity there, but I also think from a business standpoint, that the companies that people haven't been paying attention to, there's a massive opportunity there. And this is almost like, for you basketball fans, I say, imagine if you were a scout in the mid 1980s for the NBA, and there was no African-Americans playing basketball at the time in the NBA, and you were a scout. And they said, today, we're announcing that we're going to have African-Americans play in the NBA. And you were only one of 3 scouts in the whole country. You'd have a field day. Why? Because Michael Jordan is literally sitting right there, unsigned, waiting to play. All the great legends are literally sitting right there, and all you have to do is sign them up, and they're playing, and then they're killing, and they're successful. Now, I'm oversimplifying to some extent, but my point is that because people hadn't been focusing on this particular group, then you've got all these superstar entrepreneurs that folks hadn't been paying attention to, that we're able to come in, invest in, and work with. So I'll give you a couple, and then I'll land the plane so we can really get into the Q&A. But I'm sure some of you have seen, the hip hop fans have seen Jay-Z's recent video, Entrepreneur. And there's a segment in that video, there's a young lady named Denise Woodard who's created a company called Partake Foods. Partake is a healthy cookie company. It's a CPG. It's the only one company in our portfolio that's actually not a technology company. And it's a healthy, allergy-friendly cookie. She's in the Jay-Z video, and there's a line there that basically says, as successful as she is, 86 different investors said no when she went to them with her idea and her vision. And Jay-Z was one of the people who said yes. Now, I'm excited and proud because I actually met Denise 3 years ago. I was judging a pitch competition in North Carolina and saw literally the best pitch I'd ever seen in my life, and knew that she was a superstar, right? And so we made an investment last year. Jay-Z came in with a $600,000 he put into that company, and she has just done extraordinarily well with over 1,600 Target stores, over 300 Whole Foods. Revenue is just every month, an extra $100,000, $150,000 a month after month since May. And so she's been doing really, really well, excited about that company. And also we've got a company, a virtual reality company. And those of you who had heard me speak, I talk about this company all the time because I really believe that Mary Spio, a Ghanaian woman born in New York, raised in Ghana, is going to be one of the tech titans. I really believe that. And she's created a next generation streaming and virtual reality platform. She's literally a rocket scientist, literally a trained rocket scientist, Boeing engineer, NASA engineer, dual master's degree from Georgia Tech in computer science and electrical engineering. And she's created this next generation VR company called Seek. And if you go to the website, seek.com, you'll see the biggest stars and celebrities in sports and entertainment, like right there today on it, right? She did the first ever virtual reality sports camp with Dwayne Wade this summer. She did when Ziggy Marley was about to do a global world tour to celebrate his father, Bob Marley's 75th birthday anniversary. He couldn't do it, obviously, because of COVID. Ziggy and Universal Music went to Mary Spio and Seek and said, hey, can we do a virtual concert with you? They did that concert, and last month it was the most viewed video on all of Facebook. And it's, she's got everybody from Rihanna to Beyonce to the top pop stars and celebrities in South America and in Africa. It's really exceptional. And so when you think about someone who's created Netflix for virtual reality, a Ticketmaster for virtual events, and not only does she design the platform, but she's also designed the headsets, and she's designed 4D headphones. And when I say design, I don't mean just the cute colors. I'm talking about the internal engineering to create 4D spatial headphones to accompany your virtual reality experience. This is all created by an exceptional African-American woman. And I believe that that company is really set to do, planet-changing things, because it's not just concerts, it's sporting events. Well, it's not just sporting events, it's classrooms. Well, it's not just classrooms, but it's lecture halls. It's not just lecture halls, it's v-commerce, right? It's new types of malls, it's new types of entertainment, it's new types of meditation and global travel and immersive experiences that billions of people on the planet can enjoy. Right? Only a handful of people can enjoy a trip to Bali, but hundreds of millions of people could enjoy a virtual trip to Bali, and an immersive in 360-degree sound and visuals. So she's bringing this technology to the masses, and we're just honored and proud to have been able to help her in her journey. Because the reality is, just like Peter Thiel wrote that check that I shared with you, we were able to do that time and time again for that company. So, don't want to brag on the portfolio too much, but the whole thing is that, as Cameron said, and here, the bios are great. All that does is really give a little bit of credibility. Like, why am I here tonight? Why am I here to share with you? What have I done that's worth actually spending some time? But at the end of the day, the work that we do, right, it all came from that vision, and it really came from the question that Prince asked. And then we just go to work every day to make those visions a reality. So let me end there, and then let's just fire away with the questions.
Awesome.
Remember, it's AMA.
There we go.
Ask me anything.
Perfect. Thank you, Kwame, for your story and sharing more about all of your work, from the work you did with Prince to now. I even learned a couple new things about you, even having heard you speak a couple times, specifically around the only Black venture capitalist to have two Black only portfolios. So you definitely lived through that thesis and continue to invest in. I appreciate that perspective in terms of looking at it through an opportunity lens and really trying to build that creation and that wealth generation. And I do recognize it's not all about money, but it's also creating the future, right? In terms of the virtual reality that we live in, right? It's not only from, maybe a white male dominant perspective, right? It's a Black founder who, brings a diverse, perspective to that building of the future we live in. And so in starting, I kind of want to kick off the Q&A. So if people have some questions, feel free to start throwing them in the chat. I'll start to filter them into Kwame. So my first question's really, we're kind of not necessarily super high level, but we're, learning a little bit more about your story. And for those that didn't know you, learning a little bit more about you. And, we talked earlier today, and one of the things we really wanted to share was kind of like, what does the day in the life of Kwame Anku look like? And what's the behind the scenes, right? People see that the bio I shared, it's obviously a credibility factor of getting people in the door, but what's that work behind the scenes that, ultimately leads to those factors? And a lot of times all we do really see is that success, or, we saw Facebook get big, right? We didn't see all the hard work getting to that point, or, we're now seeing Partake Foods in Target, right? But we didn't see the story leading up to that. And so would love to have a little bit of, if someone's shadowing you in your shoes, what does that day in the life look like? And what are some of the, struggles that you might go through in that space?
Sure. So I'm gonna use a word that is gonna shock you when I describe it, but I'll explain it. And I'm actually happy that I'm gonna use the word I'm about to use, right? A day in the life with me is painfully boring. It's painfully boring, okay? And there's a great book that I read as a mentor of mine, but way back in the day. And the book is called The Slight Edge. I don't know if it's still in print. There's a book independently published by a guy named Jeff Olson. And he talked about the basic idea, the key to success is what he called mastering the mundane and having the consistent daily disciplines in place. And he basically said that if you look at a success curve and a failure curve, that a success curve basically is derived in life from a series of daily disciplines, and you're mastering the mundane. And what happens is incrementally over time, those actions that you're taking compound to create this. That's an exponential curve. Now that exponential curve might take a year, it might take 2, it might take 10, but that's what it is. There's nothing more, nothing less. Now the failure curve comes from the failure to do the daily disciplines. And here's what that sounds like. I'll do it tomorrow. That's it. It's not that big of a deal if I don't return the call. It's not that big of a deal if I don't send this email. It's not that big. I'll just deal with it later. It's not. It doesn't mean you're never going to do that. But what it means is, what is your pattern? See, what's your pattern? If you're doing that more times than not, you're unfortunately on the failure curve. And if you're doing that much less than not, then you're on the success curve. So let's go back to what Jeff talked about, mastering the mundane. Okay. I literally start every day and I'll just write down a piece of paper. I'll go like, today, Monday's schedule. Now, when I say schedule, I don't mean like, what am I doing from time to time? That's an Outlook, right? But I just write that down for myself. And then I write down the most important things I need to do. And then I write down the things that I'd like to do, but I may or may not get to. Okay. And then I just go to work. And it's like, it's the same thing. You know what I mean? Like, I wake up at 4 a.m. and like, I'll do yoga or some type of stretching, and I'll like make some tea, and like, I'll write my list, and I'll go for a run or something. Like, I like to just get up early, and I just like to get my mind around what I'm doing. And then I just start executing. Now I'm also homeschooling my son. So once he gets up, we got a whole routine, and we make breakfast, and we do whatever we're doing, and we figure, okay, what classes are we doing today? What's the schedule there? And then we just execute, right? And so on a given day, I'm just doing this. I'm just sending emails. I try to sketch out everything on a piece of paper, a blank piece of paper with just a pen, because I'm old school, right? So I don't like to do all this stuff in the computer and kind of organizing my life. I like just writing it down and I just check it off. One of the things that I also learned, Cameron, is that people look for goals all the time. Like goal setting, you take all these workshops, goals, like, what are you going to be a year from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? But one of the greatest things that I learned that really changed my thinking on it was literally when I was in a sales company, and it was a top seller in the company. And he did this training about, he said, basically set your 1 year, 3 year, and 5 year goal, and then don't focus on it. He said, focus on your goal for today. And that changed everything for me, because that goes back to those daily disciplines. See, if you're just doing the activity that you need to do, it compounds over time. It's just math. If I can send 8 strategic emails to key people in my universe, Monday through Saturday, that's 50 points of contact that I'm putting things in motion. And it's important, because if I'm reaching out, hey, can we schedule this meeting? The meeting gets scheduled. I'm raising money for the fund. So if I send the email, and person, Kwame, we'd love to talk. We'll get back to you, set the date. We got the date set. Good. Well, who's doing the list of who's being invited? When are we scheduling that time? And that happens, right? And it's just consistent. It's not exciting. It's not sexy, but it's literally, remember, in business, you're still in competition with people. And one of the greatest competitive edges that you have, and I don't mean to be mean, but it's true, is most people are lazy. You know what I mean? They're just lazy. So if you can just be consistent, and I always teach my son, I said, you can make things happen. You can make excuses, or you can make things happen, but you can't do both, right? And so if you just be consistent with the activity you need to get done that particular day, that's important. The second thing is you got to prioritize what's actually important. And people do these long lists, I got to do this, I got to do that. You got to be really honest with yourself. And I had to do that, because I was one of those people, right? I had a long list of all these things I need to do, and I'm really busy, and I got all this stuff to do. But the reality is, a lot of times I was procrastinating, and a lot of times I wasn't doing the things that I needed to do because I was like scared to make a phone call. You know what I mean? And that helped me too, because I had another mentor of mine, and he was really successful in this particular business. I said, man, how long does it take to be really successful at this? And he said, it takes as long as it takes you to get out of your own way. Another bing, life-changing moment, right? Because those things, if you're procrastinating, that means you're getting in your own way. If you're afraid to make a phone call, you're getting in your own way. You see what I mean? If you're talking yourself out of something that's really important, then you're in your own way. And to the extent that you're able to reframe things, and you guys, if you heard me speak before, I usually start with my favorite quote from Wayne Dyer, right? When you change the way you see things, the things that you see change. So you've got to kind of reframe. And that's the thing about being honest with yourself. what are the ways in which you block yourself? Because we can all show up looking really good and sounding really good and all this other stuff. But the reality is there was a long time in my life that like I would procrastinate. And when you procrastinate, it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It means you're replacing the things that are really important with the things that are not that important. And it's almost worse. Like it's almost worse to be busy and to not be prioritizing properly than it is to be like playing video games and just screwing around. Because at least if you're doing that, like one, you're actually being honest with yourself, right? I'm not doing my work. I'm just gonna go hang out and have fun and do something else. Well, at least you're being honest, right? And at some point you realize, okay, this isn't right. I'm not gonna get to where I need to get to. And then you're forced to change your behavior. When you're doing what I was doing, which is what most people do, you can fool yourself into thinking that, yeah, I'm grinding. It's just taking longer than I thought. And I'm just trying to make things happen and I'm grinding and I'm grinding. It's like, no, you're not grinding. You're just basically going in circles because you're not doing the things that are most important. And you guys, honestly, there's some days I'll go, if I talk to these 3 people today, my work today is done. Because these are such important phone calls that if I just make those calls, it's going to have such an effect. So I'm just setting that as the goal for today. What's my goal today, right? So my day is like really boring because I've mastered the mundane. You know, I just do almost the same thing every day. And I was talking to Cameron, we're kind of prepping. I was like, you know, the last 6 months in COVID has been the most boring time in my life. And it's been the most productive and it's been the best for my business. Because I just got into this zone where I just do the same thing every day. And then part of it was like, there wasn't other stuff to do, right? Not only was I not traveling, but it was like nothing was open. It was like, you couldn't go do stuff. You couldn't go to the movies. There's so much stuff you couldn't do. So I'm like, man, I'm just going to laser focus right now and get this stuff done. And we were able to do that. And, you know, things with the fund are going exceptionally well. We're about to start the next fund. And, you know, so long-winded soliloquy, but, you know, that's the answer.
I can tell you the answer wasn't painfully boring, but I guess following a day in the life is a painfully boring experience. But no, I love the kind of anecdotes around, you know, mastering the mundane and the consistent daily disciplines. And I like the mindset shift around, you know, I do, you hear a lot about setting the big goals, and then that's kind of, you have the thermometer on your whiteboard or something like that, right? But it's actually all those little tasks, right? Because sometimes you get consumed by a large goal, and if you're not feeling that progress each time you're doing something, then you're overburdened by that large goal and it kind of consumes you. So I appreciate that perspective. So moving on, the last kind of question, we do have a number of questions in the chat, and kind of transitioning it. You chatted a little bit and you mentioned it again, was like this economy of time. And I'd be curious to kind of, if you could share a little bit more of like what that means, and how kind of that went into a mindset shift that you had. And then we'll start transitioning into the Q&A with the questions in the chat. You
mean in terms of like the time management part of it, Cameron?
No, you mentioned it was when we were kind of discussing like emotional capacity and kind of, the current state of the world. Like I was kind of sharing with you, quite honestly, as an individual, this time has been challenging. One, just in terms of, the current pandemic, and then just the social unrest and trying to be empathetic with teams, with students, and all of those challenges. And you kind of mentioned this concept of like economy of time, and how things are speeding up, and how we need to be very intentional about the new systems and the processes that we are building moving forward, and really building those relationships in terms of our future.
Yeah, so let me try to, because I want to be able to get more questions, and I realized we're like, I was planning on talking less at the beginning and I talked too much, but hopefully it was helpful. But that economy of time, it was a conversation, you guys, I'm sure many of you are experiencing. How do you manage, right? How do you work through the social unrest, the pandemic, not just the pandemic, but I just saw the CDC said that COVID can be transported through the air. And then today they took it off the website, so they made a mistake, right? You've got a very contentious political situation right now leading up to the election. It's stressful. to say the least. And, you know, when you're dealing with a pandemic, it's obviously just the inconvenience of wearing a mask and not being able to kind of go out with your friends, right? It's people are dying. And it's not just numbers on a ticker on CNN, right? It's like, it's people we know. It's our family members. It's our friends. It's our church folks. It's our communities. You know, and so particularly with the students, right? You've seen all the stuff that's going on, Breonna Taylor, and, you know, the Black Lives Matter movement, and like, where are you in all of that? And the people who are not Black who are supporting that, and how do you put all that stuff together? And so it almost feels like every day or every week or every month, there's something else. And it's like, when is this going to end? And what I was sharing with Cameron around the economy of time is that you have to be careful about what you're allowing in your eyes and in your ears. Because there's one thing about being woke, and woke is about having a certain consciousness, right? But there's another thing about the perception of reality being based on what the news and social media is saying about these things. And the challenge is that you're living in a world, in a global system that's kind of at the end of its rope. And all systems come to an end. That's what's actually happening with this one. And I don't mean the end like it's like anarchy and it's going to be like civil war. But what I mean is that everything that we used to be doing, like the 2.5-hour commutes, right? Like all that is on, we're on pause. We're on reset. And when people say, when we go back to normal, you guys, we're not going back to that. When Facebook says that you don't have to come back to work, probably ever, you're not going back to that. You know what I mean? You're not. This is a time when the whole thing is being reorganized. Now, as entrepreneurs, our job is to create the new companies and the new systems for the new order that we're going into, the new civilization we're going into. So you got to be careful about what you're listening to and what you're talking about, because so much of it is negative and so much is pitting people against one another, right? I couldn't do the work that I do, and this is like the personal side. I'm a super upbeat dude. I'm like the motivational guy. I'm the inspire guy. If I watched an hour and a half of CNN, MSNBC, or Fox every day for 4 days, and I was on social media watching the posts, watching the videos, watching the police brutality, watching the pain and horror of my friends, regurgitating all that stuff, I literally wouldn't be able to get out of bed every day. And there's no exaggeration. Like I understand the weight of that. So not only is it like you're hammering and re-traumatizing yourself with this craziness, but more importantly, you're not building anything new. You see what I mean? Like, you're not building anything new. So it's not that I'm putting my head in the sand. I'm painfully aware of what's going on, but I got it, the economy of time. I have to be able to know enough about what's going on so that I know what's going on. But I can't be embroiled in the drama and the free-for-all and the fight because I got to be building. Now, everybody's got a role to play. That doesn't mean if you're an activist, don't do that, right? Everybody's got a role to play. But even if you're on the front lines, especially if you're a student, you enjoy a privilege that other people your age don't enjoy. And they're not looking like they can go out themselves and protest. They're like, look, I'm not a student. Like, I don't have the opportunity that you have. I mean, yeah, if you want to protest with us, great. But we need you to leverage your degree and leverage your access to build stuff to change the community. You see what I mean? So it's really important that that economy of time, we're spending more of our time, not just thinking about, but designing and building the civilization, the new civilization. And I strongly believe that. And some people say, oh, it's crazy. It's not the end of it. This is the end, guys. You know, when you got a president that's talking about, hey, you know, maybe I'll just stick around for 3 or 4 terms and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm not saying anything against the president. What I'm saying is that you're living in a whole different order of reality, right? And it's the conservative, liberal, Democrat, Republican, us versus them. That's not the model for the future. I mean, that's the model for the end. And so it's our job to be able to give a third pathway, a third way. And that's not just about ideology. That's about literally building new things that people can actually buy into. What's the new education system going to look like? The new way we design neighborhoods and communities, the new businesses, the new energy systems, the new education systems, everything that we need to be designing and conceptualizing, that's what we need to be putting our energy into. And then that attracts multi-generational, multi-ethnic, multi-ideological, and your somewhat ideological differences don't get in the way of your ability to actually design and build this stuff. You see what I mean? So that's what I meant there.
Thank you, Kwame. We have a few minutes, so I think I'm going to hit you with some lightning round. Some of these are more quick to, the fund and kind of how you pick entrepreneurs and those types of things. So first question's from Carolyn. What's your approach in picking which entrepreneurs to fund if you have the pick of the field?
Yeah, so I'm really fortunate because for the most part, I'm choosing people. I can see resilience from a mile away. I can see a spirit of I will get it done no matter what from a mile away. I'm looking for heart. I'm looking for grit. I'm looking for somebody who can rally people around a vision, because that means they can build teams. That means they can get people to not only invest in them with a check, but invest with them with their mind and their heart. You see what I mean? So I really look for almost like a personality type. I want to see somebody who's been hit really hard several times and has been able to get up and get through it. Because I've been hit several times really hard, and I've gotten up and I've gotten through it. And I know what that means. And those of us as investors, we know what that means when we see, it's like game recognizes game. Oh, you're one of us. Okay. Yeah, here's somebody who can knock down 8 times and get up 9. We can work together. So that's the main thing I look for.
Awesome.
I'm sure what that answer was. It was awesome.
There we go. All right. So next one is, do you invest in, we're just at 6. Do you have a few minutes just to go over, just to tackle maybe 1 or 2 more of these?
Yeah. I mean, could we do this, Cameron? Like, let me answer the question so we can end on time. But it's like, we want to do like the after party. Can we do that for like 15 minutes?
Sure. I'm happy to do that.
Okay. So what's the question? Let me do lightning.
So the last one is, do you invest in pre-revenue startups?
Yes.
All right.
Yeah. So we're going to end on time, and then let's do the after party.
Okay. Perfect. Sounds good. So, I mean, these are going to be tough to do, maybe lightning, but what do most VC, or why do most VCs want warm intros, and how can someone not get connected on Sand Hill Road get warm intros?
Yeah, good question. So it's 6 on the dot. So let me answer that one. And then, like I'm saying, if you want to like close it down, and then we can keep going.
Gotcha. Okay. I got what you're saying. Yeah. So, in closing it down, for those that want to stay on and continue to ask questions, we're more than happy to stay on. So we're really appreciative of all you hopping on and for Kwame, sharing his story and getting deep with us on a few of these questions, and really sharing, behind the scenes of, how he's kind of built the success that we see, but kind of the, what was it? The daily mundane, or
mastering the mundane.
Mastering the mundane. So that was a key takeaway for me. Events that are coming up from the Carlson Center and in partnership with other organizations. We have Laura Good, who is here. We have the Startup Stack Happy Hour happening on the 30th with Gina Lujan. So definitely come check her out from Hacker Lab and see the great work that she's doing in the makers movement area. And then we also have our next AMA with Robert Rodriguez, the CEO of Cambria Solutions, on October 6th. And then we'll be kicking off our virtual entrepreneurship toolkit series on October 7th. So we're really excited to have had all of you here today, and we're really appreciative of you, Kwame, sharing your time with us and your experience and expertise. So for those of you that want to stay on, you're more than welcome to stay on here, and we can address those last questions. But without further ado, I guess I can close the recording out on that, and we'll be good to go.
Thank you.
All right.